The door creaked open, and I felt a rush of anticipation mixed with anxiety. My stepson, Jake, stood there with a lopsided grin that reminded me so much of his father. He had grown since his last visit, now taller and more confident. I forced a smile, masking the turmoil within me. My marriage felt like a heavy blanket, suffocating and worn out from years of the same routine. "Hey, it's good to see you," I said, my voice slightly higher than usual. As he stepped inside, our hands brushed unintentionally while reaching for the same bag. A jolt of electricity coursed through me, and I quickly withdrew my hand, pretending to adjust my hair instead. Jake chuckled lightly, oblivious to the wave of emotions crashing over me. My husband had left early that morning for a business trip, a surprise he hadn't mentioned until the last minute. "I'll be back in 2 days," he had said with a distracted wave as he rushed out the door. That left me alone with Jake in our cluttered living room filled with family photos and memories. The silence between us felt thick. I could sense an unspoken tension lingering in the air. "Want something to drink?" I asked, trying to break the awkwardness as I moved toward the kitchen. He followed closely behind, his presence almost palpable. As I poured 2 glasses of iced tea, my go-to summer drink, I caught him glancing at me from the corner of my eye. The way his gaze lingered made my heart race unnaturally. "Thanks," he replied softly as I handed him a glass. Our fingers brushed again briefly, and it felt like an unintentional promise hanging in the air between us. I quickly looked away, focusing on the view outside, the sun casting long shadows across our backyard where kids from the neighborhood played. We settled on the couch with our drinks in hand, trying to make small talk about his college life and my mundane days filled with chores and routines that seemed never-ending. But even as we spoke about trivial matters, his plans for summer internships or my latest baking attempts, my mind drifted back to that fleeting touch. Suddenly, Jake laughed at an old family story about his childhood antics involving spilled lemonade at a picnic we had once shared at Riverside Park, a local favorite spot known for its vibrant flowers and laughter echoing through its paths. His laughter was infectious. I found myself genuinely smiling for the first time in what felt like ages. "Remember when Dad tried to fix that old grill?" he asked between chuckles. "Oh yes. And ended up burning everything," I replied with a laugh that surprised even me. As we shared these moments together, something shifted within me, a realization that this connection was more than just familial warmth. It was something deeper simmering beneath the surface. But just as quickly as it came, guilt washed over me like cold water splashed on hot pavement. My husband's absence loomed large in my mind, a constant reminder of my commitment and responsibilities that anchored me back into reality. Jake reached across to grab a chip from the bowl on the coffee table. Our hands met again briefly before pulling apart awkwardly. The moment hung between us like an unsaid confession waiting to be acknowledged but buried under layers of propriety and fear. Sorry," he mumbled as he withdrew his hand quickly as if burned by an invisible flame. "No need to apologize," I said too quickly, feeling flustered but also strangely exhilarated by this unexpected moment of intimacy. As we sat there in silence again, I couldn't shake off how much Jake's presence stirred something deep inside me, a longing for connection that had long been dormant during years spent in a routine marriage where every day felt like Groundhog Day. The afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky outside our window when suddenly Jake's phone buzzed loudly on the table between us, a sharp reminder of reality breaking through this fragile bubble we had created together. "I should probably check this," he said reluctantly but didn't move immediately, his eyes still fixed on mine as if searching for something unspoken. I held my breath while watching him pull away slightly, the distance between us growing ever so subtly but painfully tangible at that moment. Just then, out of nowhere came a loud crash from outside, kids playing too roughly perhaps, or maybe something falling over? It broke our moment entirely as we both turned toward the noise instinctively before looking back at each other again. An unspoken acknowledgement passing between us before reality settled back into place around us once more, like an unwelcome guest interrupting intimate moments shared in secret corners of life. As evening approached with shadows creeping along walls like whispers carrying secrets yet untold, I realized this visit would change everything. For better or worse remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: Jake's lingering gaze would haunt me long after he left again. Dinner was set for 6, a routine I had grown accustomed to over the years. The table was adorned with mismatched plates and an old floral centerpiece that had seen better days. I found myself glancing toward the kitchen, where Jake was rummaging through the cabinets. The sound of clinking dishes felt oddly comforting yet charged with an energy I hadn't experienced in years. "Do you remember that time Dad tried to make lasagna?" Jake's voice broke through my thoughts, bringing a smile to my face. I nodded, recalling the disaster that had ensued when he accidentally used salt instead of sugar. We both laughed, a genuine moment amidst the mundane backdrop of our lives. As we shared stories, the laughter flowed freely between us. It felt like a breath of fresh air in a stifling room. For a fleeting moment, I forgot about the weight of my marriage and the routine that suffocated me. The warmth of his presence made me feel alive again. Then came the moment that would shift everything once more. We reached for the same dish, a bowl of steaming pasta, and our hands brushed against each other. My heart raced as our eyes met, and in that split second, I felt an undeniable connection. We kissed, I thought, though it hadn't happened yet. It was merely an unspoken promise lingering in the air. The tension hung between us like a thick fog as dinner continued. My mind raced with guilt and excitement, battling against what felt like betrayal toward my husband who was miles away on his trip. Jake seemed oblivious to my inner turmoil, engrossed in sharing more family anecdotes that only deepened our bond. After dinner, we moved to the living room, where old photographs lined the walls, memories frozen in time. Jake pointed at one featuring him as a toddler with his father's arm slung over his shoulder. "I miss those days," he said quietly, almost wistfully. I could sense vulnerability beneath his casual tone. It drew me closer to him in ways I couldn't explain. "You know," I began hesitantly, "things change." He nodded but didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned back slightly and studied my face as if searching for answers hidden in my expression. The clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed, a reminder of how quickly time passed while we were lost in conversation. Just then, Jake's phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a message from someone named Mia. My stomach twisted at the thought of him having someone else outside our shared moments. "Who's Mia?" I asked casually, trying to mask my curiosity with indifference. "Oh, just a friend," he replied nonchalantly but didn't elaborate further. I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy mixed with guilt for even entertaining thoughts about him when there were boundaries we shouldn't cross, yet here we were dancing around them without realizing how close we were getting to breaking them entirely. As night fell outside and shadows danced across our faces cast by flickering candlelight, I felt an overwhelming urge to escape this reality for just a little longer, to savor this connection before returning to life's responsibilities waiting outside these walls. "Let's watch something," I suggested impulsively as if it would shield us from what loomed ahead, the inevitable return to normalcy and all its constraints. Jake agreed enthusiastically. We settled on an old movie neither of us had seen in years but remembered fondly from childhood family nights spent together long before everything shifted into this uncharted territory filled with unspoken feelings and desires waiting just beneath the surface. As we watched side by side on the couch, a comfortable distance apart, I couldn't shake off how much closer we felt than ever before despite no physical contact beyond those fleeting brushes earlier in dinner preparations or shared laughter echoing through empty spaces where words lingered unsaid between us like secrets begging to be unveiled under starlit skies somewhere far away from here. Then came another unexpected twist, during one particularly funny scene where characters found themselves entangled in chaos akin to our own lives lately. Our laughter erupted uncontrollably until suddenly our faces turned serious again, as if sensing something deeper within each other than mere familial ties binding us together through years gone by. In that charged atmosphere filled with warmth radiating from both sides like invisible strings pulling us closer together, our lips nearly touched when we leaned forward simultaneously toward popcorn resting precariously between us. It happened so fast yet slow enough for me to realize what was unfolding right there under dim lights illuminating two souls caught between choices made long ago versus those yet unexplored ahead. Before either could retreat back into safe territory marked by boundaries drawn years prior, nos besamos. The moment hung suspended briefly before reality crashed back down around us like thunder rumbling overhead announcing storms brewing just beyond horizon lines separating what was familiar from what lay ahead cloaked within uncertainty shrouded by desires left unfulfilled until now. The rush of guilt washed over me immediately after. It felt intoxicating yet terrifying all at once, a realization dawning upon me about how much this visit had shifted everything within myself without warning or consent given beforehand. Maybe this is all wrong, I whispered under my breath while feeling heat radiating off Jake's skin, still lingering close enough for comfort yet far enough away, not crossing lines drawn carefully throughout lives lived apart until now when everything began unraveling unexpectedly. But even as doubts crept into my mind questioning every choice made leading up until tonight, I couldn't ignore how much brighter things seemed illuminated only moments ago when laughter echoed through empty rooms filled memories shared together. As evening wore on into late hours spent lost together amid flickering screens showing characters navigating through their own complex webs spun tightly around love intertwined with loyalty, I realized something deep inside. Whatever this connection meant moving forward, it would change everything forevermore, whether willingly embraced or fought against tooth and nail until nothing remained but echoes fading softly into darkness surrounding us both. The movie ended, and the silence that followed felt heavy. I glanced at him, my stepson, sitting just a few feet away. The glow from the screen had faded, but the warmth of his presence lingered. I could still feel the electric charge from our earlier brush of hands. Guilt pressed down on me like a weight, but so did an undeniable thrill. I should probably head to bed, I said, breaking the tension. It's getting late. Yeah, he replied softly, his eyes lingering on mine. But I'm glad we did this. I nodded, unsure how to respond. The laughter we shared over old family stories still echoed in my mind, mingling with the memory of our accidental kiss. It was as if the walls of my mundane life were slowly crumbling around us, revealing something new and terrifying beneath. As I stood up to leave, he reached out and touched my arm lightly. The simple gesture sent a rush of warmth through me. Can we do this again tomorrow? He asked, hope shining in his gaze. Of course, I managed to say, though my heart raced with the implications of those words. That night was restless. Thoughts swirled around in my mind like leaves caught in a storm. My husband was away on business, leaving me with an unsettling sense of freedom mixed with guilt. I lay awake for hours, replaying every moment from our time together. Each shared glance felt like a secret pact forming between us. The next day dawned bright and clear, but inside me churned a storm of emotions. I busied myself with mundane chores, laundry piling up and dishes waiting to be washed, but nothing could distract me from thoughts of him. What would happen during our next encounter? Would we cross another line? Later that afternoon, as I prepared dinner, simple pasta with garlic and olive oil, I heard a knock at the door. My heart raced as I opened it to find him standing there with a shy smile and a bag of snacks in hand. I thought we could have a movie marathon, he suggested casually. I hesitated for just a moment before stepping aside to let him in. Sounds good, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fluttering in my chest. We settled onto the couch again, surrounded by bowls filled with popcorn and candy bars that seemed far too indulgent for two adults sharing an afternoon together. As we laughed at the ridiculous plot twists on screen, I felt an unspoken bond growing stronger between us, a connection that defied logic yet felt so real. "Remember when you told me about your first crush?" he asked suddenly during one particularly cheesy scene. I chuckled nervously. It was an innocent topic but felt loaded nonetheless. "How could I forget? You were just a kid then." He leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful as he continued speaking about childhood memories, the kind that made me feel nostalgic yet uneasy at the same time. In that moment, something shifted. Our laughter faded into silence as we both realized how close we were sitting together on the couch. Our knees brushed against each other almost imperceptibly, a reminder of how thin the line had become between familial affection and something more profound. "Sometimes it feels like no one really knows us," he said quietly after some time had passed. His vulnerability drew me in closer. It was disarming yet comforting all at once. "I get that feeling too," I admitted softly. And then it happened again. Our lips met briefly as if pulled together by some unseen force compelling us forward despite everything else around us fading into oblivion for just those fleeting seconds before reality crashed back down upon us like waves against jagged rocks. We kissed. The weight of what just transpired hung heavily between us like an unsaid confession neither wanted to acknowledge fully yet couldn't deny either. We both pulled away instinctively. Shock painted across our faces mingled with excitement and fear alike, an intoxicating blend that left me breathless while simultaneously sending shivers down my spine at what came next. As evening approached once more, the sun setting behind distant hills, I realized how much our lives had changed in such little time since his arrival only days ago. Everything felt different now, charged with possibilities previously unimagined or even considered until now. The phone rang unexpectedly, breaking through this haze, a reminder of normalcy beckoning me back toward reality where responsibilities awaited without fail regardless of personal desires swirling within. It was my husband calling from afar. "Hey. Just checking in. How's everything going?" I hesitated before answering. Lying felt wrong while revealing too much risked everything unraveling before me entirely. "It's fine," I managed finally while glancing sideways at him sitting quietly nearby, the tension palpable still lingering thickly within air surrounding us both despite distance separating worlds apart. "I'll be home tomorrow night," he continued cheerfully, unaware of anything amiss lurking beneath surface layers hiding deeper truths, waiting patiently for moments when light shone brightest illuminating hidden shadows cast long ago. "Looking forward to it." My voice sounded strained even to my own ears, a mere echo bouncing off walls trapping secrets yearning escape into sunlight beyond confines built carefully over years spent together navigating life's winding paths hand in hand. After hanging up abruptly without further conversation exchanged between stepson and myself, I couldn't shake feeling trapped within confines created by choices made long before today arrived uninvitedly, knocking loudly, demanding attention urgently needed elsewhere far removed from current circumstances unfolding here now. As night fell upon us once again, enveloping cabins, warm glow illuminating faces lost amid swirling thoughts swirling deeper still, I knew whatever came next would change everything forevermore, whether willingly embraced or fought against tooth and nail until nothing remained but echoes fading softly into darkness surrounding us both. The cabin felt smaller that night, as if the walls were closing in with every shared glance. My heart raced, a steady drumbeat against the silence that enveloped us. We spent the night together, huddled under blankets, watching the flickering shadows dance across the walls. The tension was palpable, and I could feel his presence beside me like a magnet pulling me closer. As we discussed our plans for the next day, a casual touch of his fingers against mine sent a jolt through my body. "What do you think about hiking up to that overlook?" he asked, his voice low and tentative. I nodded, trying to maintain an air of composure while my mind spiraled with unspoken thoughts. "We should go early," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes held mine for a moment too long, and I felt vulnerable under his gaze. It was exhilarating yet terrifying to be seen so clearly after years of feeling invisible in my own life. Later that evening, as we prepared for bed, we accidentally brushed against each other again while reaching for the same pillow. Our laughter broke the tension momentarily but quickly faded into an awkward silence. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said softly, looking down at his hands. There was something in his tone that made my heart ache, a vulnerability that drew me in even more. I wanted to reach out and comfort him but feared crossing an invisible line we both seemed to sense yet never spoke of. The weight of our unacknowledged feelings hung heavy between us like fog obscuring clarity. The next morning dawned bright and crisp. I awoke before him and took a moment to gather my thoughts on the porch overlooking the mountains. The beauty around me contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside my heart. Was this trip meant to save my marriage or lead me further down an uncertain path? As he joined me outside, I tried to shake off my doubts. "Ready for our adventure?" he asked with a smile that lit up his face. I couldn't help but smile back despite the knot forming in my stomach at what lay ahead. We hiked through trails lined with towering pines and vibrant wildflowers, each step pulling us deeper into nature's embrace and away from reality's harsh edges. "It's beautiful here," he remarked, glancing over at me as we reached a clearing with breathtaking views of the valley below. "Yes," I replied softly, feeling an overwhelming urge to share more than just this moment with him. "It feels like we're escaping everything." His eyes searched mine as if looking for confirmation of what we both knew was unspoken. But just as quickly as that connection sparked between us, it flickered out when I heard voices approaching from behind, a group of hikers making their way up the same trail. My heart sank as reality crashed back in like cold water splashing across heated skin. "Let's head back," I suggested abruptly, eager to put distance between us and those who could shatter this fragile bubble we had created together. He nodded but didn't say anything more. Instead, he fell silent beside me on our descent. Back at the cabin later that afternoon, I busied myself preparing lunch while he wandered outside for some fresh air. The clatter of pots and pans echoed in the kitchen as I tried to distract myself from thoughts spiraling back toward him, the way his laughter filled spaces once empty or how his presence ignited something long buried within me. When he returned inside with flushed cheeks and tousled hair from wind-blown adventures outside, he looked different somehow, lighter yet burdened by something unsaid lingering just beneath surface tension between us. I felt compelled to bridge that gap again. "Are you okay?" I asked cautiously. It was an invitation wrapped in concern rather than accusation. "I'm fine," he replied too quickly before adding hesitantly, "just thinking about how complicated everything is." His admission hung heavily in the air between us like unspooled thread waiting to be woven together or severed entirely, an invitation into deeper territory neither dared traverse yet. A sudden noise outside broke our momentary connection. My husband's truck rumbled up the driveway unexpectedly early from his day trip, his arrival sending adrenaline rushing through me akin to being caught mid-sentence when one shouldn't have spoken at all. "Let's act normal," I whispered urgently before rushing toward the door just before it swung open revealing him standing there, cheerful yet oblivious, as if nothing had changed during those fleeting hours spent alone with my stepson. "Did you two have fun?" he asked brightly while glancing between us both suspiciously, perhaps sensing something off-kilter but unable to pinpoint exactly what it might be. A crack forming beneath surface-level smiles exchanged among family members desperately trying not to acknowledge shifting dynamics unfolding around them all. The weight of secrets grew heavier still as laughter filled space where truth remained hidden underneath layers built over years spent avoiding confrontation altogether. The mountain getaway loomed ahead, a family trip that felt more like a prison sentence than a solution. I watched as my husband excitedly packed the car, oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside me. His enthusiasm clashed with my dread. I had hoped for a chance to reconnect, but all I could think about was how close my stepson would be. "Are you ready?" my husband called out, his voice cheerful and bright. I forced a smile, nodding as I grabbed my bag. My heart raced at the thought of sharing a cabin with him and the tension it would create. The idea of being trapped in close quarters made me anxious. As we drove up the winding road, the trees thickened around us, their branches arching overhead like guardians of secrets. My stepson sat in the back seat, his presence palpable even without words. I could feel his gaze on me, a silent acknowledgement of our unspoken connection. It was unsettling yet intoxicating. "Isn't this beautiful?" he remarked as we reached the top of the mountain. His excitement contrasted sharply with my inner turmoil. I wanted to share in his joy but felt suffocated by guilt and fear. The cabin looked quaint but held an air of confinement that made me uneasy. Once inside, we settled into our routine, my husband unpacking snacks and planning hikes while I tried to keep myself busy with trivial tasks. But every time I caught my stepson's eye, there was that spark again, a reminder of everything unsaid between us. I could barely focus on what my husband was saying. "Let's go for a walk later," my stepson suggested casually, as if it were just another family outing. My heart skipped a beat at the suggestion. It felt loaded with possibilities and risks all at once. "Sure," I replied too quickly, hoping my voice didn't betray me. As night fell and we gathered around the fireplace, warmth enveloped us. My husband spoke animatedly about hiking trails while I stared into the flames, lost in thoughts of what might happen when we were alone together later that evening. The flickering light danced shadows across his face and made me acutely aware of how much distance there was between us emotionally. "Are you okay?" my husband asked suddenly, breaking through my reverie. His brow furrowed with concern as he studied me closely. "You seem distant." "I'm fine," I replied quickly, forcing another smile while feeling anything but fine inside. The night dragged on as laughter echoed off the walls, a stark contrast to the silence that lay heavy beneath it all. After everyone turned in for bed, I found myself unable to sleep, thoughts swirled around like leaves caught in an autumn windstorm. When morning arrived, an unexpected storm rolled in, a fierce wind rattling against windows and rain pounding down relentlessly outside. It isolated us from any planned excursions and forced us to stay indoors together longer than intended. "Guess we're stuck here," my stepson said lightly as he joined me on the couch where I sat curled up under a blanket. I nodded absently while trying not to stare at him too long. Every glance sent shivers down my spine, an electric tension crackling between us that felt both thrilling and dangerous. "Want to play cards?" he offered after a moment's pause. "Sure," I replied softly, grateful for any distraction from what hung unspoken between us. As we played game after game, laughter filled our small space, a sound so foreign amid all that had been left unsaid before this trip began. Each playful jab or shared smile chipped away at barriers erected over years spent avoiding uncomfortable truths about ourselves and each other. Then came an unexpected moment, during one round where he leaned closer to see my cards better. Our shoulders brushed against each other lightly yet sent jolts through me like static electricity igniting something deep inside. "We should do this more often," he said casually afterward while pretending to focus on shuffling cards again, yet his eyes flickered toward mine with an intensity that made it hard to breathe for just one heartbeat longer than necessary before looking away again. Just then lightning flashed outside followed by thunder rumbling ominously overhead, a reminder that nature mirrored our own brewing storm within these walls. "I think it's getting worse out there," I remarked nervously glancing toward window where rain lashed wildly against glass panes now fogged over by heat from fire still crackling nearby. It felt like being trapped in some surreal bubble where reality blurred beyond reach. "Maybe we should talk," he suggested suddenly breaking through silence wrapping around us both like heavy blankets suffocating warmth underneath them instead offering solace from chaos raging outside. I hesitated for just one moment before nodding slowly. Perhaps this was necessary, to confront what had lingered too long without acknowledgement or resolution hanging uneasily between two people who shared more than just familial ties. But before anything could unfold further, the door swung open unexpectedly revealing my husband standing there wide-eyed looking bewildered by sight before him, both of us caught off guard, frozen mid-motion, caught somewhere between confession and revelation. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Tension morphed into something far more complicated than either of us had anticipated moments ago. "What's going on here?" he asked sharply, meeting our gazes, alternately filled, confusion laced with accusation lurking just beneath surface, waiting patiently for its moment to erupt into chaos. The storm outside roared as if mirroring the turmoil inside me. My husband's voice cut through the air, demanding answers I wasn't ready to give. I felt trapped in this cabin, surrounded by the very family dynamics I had hoped to escape. The flickering candlelight cast shadows on the walls, amplifying the silence that hung heavily between us. "We just talked," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. The truth was more complex than that, but how could I explain? How could I admit that sharing secrets with my stepson had become a lifeline for me? The tension in the room was palpable, and I feared that any wrong move could shatter the fragile equilibrium we were trying to maintain. "Talked about what?" he pressed, his tone sharper now. I glanced at my stepson, who remained silent, his expression unreadable. The weight of his gaze felt both comforting and suffocating. In that moment, I realized how easily our shared moments could be misconstrued. It was a dangerous game we were playing. As night fell, we settled into an uneasy routine. My husband took the couch while my stepson and I shared a room with 2 twin beds. There was no plan for what would happen next. It felt like fate had thrown us together in this isolated space. We spent the night together beneath a blanket of uncertainty, each of us wrestling with our own thoughts while the storm raged outside. The next morning brought an unexpected calm. The sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the cabin in a warm glow. Yet inside me brewed a storm of its own, guilt intertwined with desire as I caught myself stealing glances at my stepson while he prepared breakfast. Each smile exchanged felt charged with unspoken words and emotions that threatened to spill over. Later that day, we ventured outside to explore the snow-covered landscape. My husband trudged ahead with enthusiasm, oblivious to the silent tension building between us. My stepson walked beside me, our shoulders brushing occasionally as we navigated through fresh powder. Each contact sent jolts of electricity coursing through me, an exhilarating reminder of our connection. "Is this what you imagined for our trip?" he asked softly as we paused to admire the view from a ridge overlooking a valley blanketed in white. "No," I admitted honestly, "but it's beautiful." It wasn't just the scenery, it was him standing there beside me that made everything feel more vibrant. As we turned back towards the cabin, dark clouds gathered on the horizon once again. A sudden chill swept through the air, a stark reminder of how quickly things could change. Just as we reached for each other's hands to steady ourselves against an icy gust of wind, thunder cracked loudly overhead. In an instant, raindrops began to fall heavily around us. "We need to get back," my husband shouted from ahead as he rushed toward shelter without looking back. The rain intensified into a torrential downpour as we sprinted toward the cabin. By some miracle, we made it just before lightning illuminated the sky above us like fireworks gone wrong. Inside, breathless and soaked through, my heart raced not only from exertion but from something deeper, an adrenaline-fueled rush at being so close yet still so far from crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. "Let's dry off," my husband suggested awkwardly while tossing towels at us from across the room. His focus shifted away as he busied himself with organizing supplies for dinner later on, a mundane task amidst chaos brewing beneath our roof. "Are you okay?" my stepson asked quietly after his father had left for another room. "I'm fine," I replied too quickly. It felt like an inadequate cover-up for everything swirling around us both emotionally and physically. He stepped closer until there was barely any space left between us, just enough room for whispered confessions and unspoken desires hanging in thick air like fog settling over mountains at dusk. "I don't think this trip is helping," he admitted finally after what felt like hours passed filled only with silence punctuated by raindrops tapping against windowsills surrounding us both like barriers holding back more than just weather outside. A barrier shielding secrets waiting impatiently underneath skin yearning for freedom long denied by circumstance alone. Maybe not, I agreed softly but hesitated before adding anything else. Fear gripped me tightly when it came time to confront reality head-on rather than hide behind layers built up over years spent avoiding uncomfortable truths about love lost somewhere along life's winding path paved with uncertainty ahead. Just then another loud clap of thunder shook our surroundings, prompting instinctual reactions. Bodies instinctively moved closer together seeking warmth amid chaos raging all around us. A fleeting moment where safety met vulnerability, blurring lines drawn carefully between family bonds stretched thin under pressure, mounting steadily onward until finally breaking point arrived unexpectedly, leaving both shaken yet yearning simultaneously. What if? He began tentatively before trailing off into uncertain territory where words failed him completely, leaving behind only echoes lingering within hearts desperately searching for clarity amid confusion surrounding every choice made thus far leading up till now. Before he could finish speaking or even fathom consequences looming on horizon ahead, the door swung open, suddenly revealing my husband standing there, drenched yet determined eyes locked onto ours, instantly shifting atmosphere, once more forcing reality crashing back down upon fragile shoulders left trembling under weight too heavy carried far too long. "What are you two doing?" His voice rang out sharp, cutting through tension thick enough slice air surrounding us both, sending ripples cascading outward, threatening everything built up until now. The moment my husband's voice sliced through the air, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I turned to face him, heart racing, knowing that everything was about to change. My stepson stood frozen beside me, his expression a mix of surprise and confusion. The warmth we'd shared moments before evaporated, leaving an icy chill in its place. I stammered, searching for words that wouldn't betray the truth. My mind raced back to our stolen moments, laughing over old family stories, sharing secrets late into the night. I could almost feel the echoes of our laughter lingering in the cabin walls. But now, with my husband's piercing gaze upon us, those memories felt like shadows creeping into the light. "Just what?" he pressed, his tone sharper than I'd ever heard. "You two look awfully cozy." The accusation hung heavy in the air as I struggled to maintain my composure. I could see disbelief clouding his eyes. He sensed something was off. "We were talking," my stepson finally spoke up, his voice steady but strained. "About family stuff." The way he glanced at me sent a shiver down my spine. It was a silent plea for solidarity amidst the storm brewing around us. My husband crossed his arms, skepticism etched into his features. "Family stuff? Sounds like you're keeping secrets." There was a tension in the room that felt suffocating, and I knew we were standing on a precipice of revelation. As if sensing my internal turmoil, my stepson shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should take a break," he suggested softly, looking at me with an understanding that only deepened my guilt. I nodded slowly. Escape from this confrontation felt necessary. We stepped outside onto the porch where cool mountain air greeted us like a balm against rising anxiety. The stars twinkled above in stark contrast to our tangled emotions below. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I whispered as we leaned against the railing together. "I know," he replied quietly, glancing back toward the cabin where my husband remained inside. "But it feels like we're both trapped." His words struck a chord deep within me. They echoed everything I'd been feeling since he arrived. Just then, an old friend of mine unexpectedly appeared at the end of the driveway, a familiar face from years past who'd always brought warmth and laughter into my life. "Is that you?" she called out cheerfully as she approached us with her dog trotting beside her. "Sarah," I exclaimed, surprised yet delighted to see her here in these mountains. "We used to spend summers hiking and reminiscing about life before marriage and responsibilities took over our lives. Thought I'd surprise you." "How's everything?" she asked innocently as she petted her dog's head. My heart sank at her question. How could I explain what was happening without revealing too much? "It's complicated," I replied cautiously while stealing a glance at my stepson who stood silently beside me. "Complicated is an understatement," he murmured under his breath, but Sarah didn't hear him over her dog's playful barking. As we exchanged pleasantries and caught up briefly on life since college days, nostalgia washed over me like a wave, reminding me of simpler times when love felt straightforward and uncomplicated. But as Sarah chatted away about her adventures and travels since moving out west, reality crept back into focus again. Here I was standing between two worlds, one filled with obligations and expectations and another pulsing with unspoken desires that threatened to unravel everything. When Sarah finally left after promising to catch up later over coffee at Joe's diner down in town, silence enveloped us once more like a heavy fog rolling down from the peaks above. "I can't keep doing this," my stepson said suddenly after she disappeared from sight. His voice held an edge of frustration mixed with vulnerability that tugged at my heartstrings even more than before. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously while trying not to betray how deeply his words affected me. "This, whatever it is between us, it's not fair." He looked directly into my eyes as if searching for answers only I could provide but didn't have any clear ones to give him right now either. I nodded slowly, understanding all too well how tangled our feelings had become since those first innocent moments together just days ago when everything seemed so much simpler before reality crashed down around us both. "I know," I finally admitted softly, feeling tears prickling behind closed eyelids, threatening escape yet again, reminding me just how vulnerable the situation had rendered us both despite every effort made thus far, trying desperately hold things together without falling apart completely instead. Before either of us could say anything further or contemplate next steps forward, my husband burst through cabin door calling out sharply, "Dinner's ready. Come inside." The command echoed ominously across still night air, reminding us both just how precarious this balance truly was between loyalty and desire, a line drawn so thin it felt almost impossible not to cross. The moment my husband called us inside, the weight of unspoken words hung heavily between us. I glanced at my stepson, who seemed to mirror my internal conflict. His eyes held a mixture of longing and uncertainty, reflecting the tension that had built during our time together. The warmth of the cabin felt stifling, as if it was closing in on me. As we entered, the smell of roasted chicken filled the air, mingling with the scent of pine from outside. My husband busied himself at the table, unaware of the charged atmosphere that lingered in every corner. "I hope you both are hungry," he said cheerfully, but I could sense an underlying tension in his voice. He was trying to hold on to normalcy while the cracks in our relationship widened. Dinner began with small talk about the weather and plans for tomorrow's hike. My husband mentioned a few trails he had read about, and I forced a smile, nodding along. But my mind was elsewhere, lost in thoughts of my stepson's gaze and what might happen once we were alone again. My heart raced as I recalled our shared moments under the stars, where vulnerability had drawn us closer. "Do you think we can tackle that steep trail?" my stepson asked innocently. His question pulled me back to reality. "It might be challenging," I replied cautiously, trying to gauge my husband's reaction. He shrugged it off, eager for an adventure that felt increasingly distant from me. As dinner progressed, my husband inadvertently touched on our relationship issues when he mentioned how couples often drift apart without communication. "You know, it's important to talk about things, to keep the connection alive," he said earnestly. A pang of guilt hit me as I realized how far we had strayed from that connection. My stepson shifted in his seat, his expression thoughtful yet troubled. "Sometimes it feels easier to just avoid tough conversations," he added quietly, glancing at me as if seeking validation for his words. His insight struck a chord deep within me. It echoed my own fears about love and loyalty. The conversation turned back to mundane topics as we finished our meal, yet I couldn't shake off how exposed I felt after that exchange. The evening wore on with laughter and stories shared over dessert, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. With every laugh shared with my husband, I felt myself drifting further away from him and closer to my stepson. After dinner ended and dishes were cleared away, I found myself alone with my stepson on the porch while my husband went inside to fetch something. The night sky was dotted with stars. It felt almost surreal compared to what lay ahead in our lives back home. "I didn't mean to make things awkward tonight," he said softly as we leaned against the railing side by side. "I just feel like there's so much left unsaid." His honesty made my heart race again. It was both thrilling and terrifying. I sighed deeply before responding, "It's complicated, there are things we shouldn't discuss." But even as those words left my lips, I knew they rang hollow against what simmered beneath the surface between us. Just then, an unexpected gust of wind swept through the trees surrounding us, a reminder of how fragile everything felt at this moment. We stood in silence for a beat longer before retreating back inside where my husband awaited us. The rest of the night passed uneasily, laughter echoed from within but felt distant from where I stood emotionally. My thoughts spiraled around choices made and paths not taken, between loyalty to my husband and this newfound connection with my stepson that pulled at me relentlessly. As sleep took over later that night in our shared cabin space, my mind remained restless, replaying moments spent together, the stolen glances and lingering touches that ignited something within me that refused to be ignored any longer. Morning light broke through early. Its warmth coaxed me awake with a sense of urgency about decisions ahead, decisions that would shape not only this trip but also potentially alter everything I held dear back home. I found myself contemplating whether reaffirming commitment meant sacrificing parts of myself or embracing new facets yet unexplored within love itself, a question too complex for simple answers but one demanding clarity soon enough. When breakfast rolled around, the atmosphere shifted again as if everyone sensed an impending storm, not weather-related but emotional upheaval brewing just beneath calm surfaces waiting for release. My husband spoke cheerfully while serving pancakes piled high but noticed how quiet both his son and I had become. It seemed impossible not to notice how our dynamic had changed since arriving here together just days prior amid laughter-filled memories now tinged with tension instead. "Are you two all right?" he asked, finally breaking through silence, a genuine concern lacing his tone. But all I could do was nod absent-mindedly while avoiding eye contact, knowing full well what lay ahead would require more than simple reassurances now offered freely between us all too often lately without substance behind them anymore. As breakfast concluded amidst forced smiles exchanged among us, I realized time was running out before decisions needed addressing head-on without hesitation any longer. Otherwise consequences would ripple far beyond this moment into lives intertwined, forever changing paths taken or forsaken altogether. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow that felt strangely out of place. I stood at the sink, washing the dishes, but my mind was elsewhere. The remnants of our breakfast lingered in the air, yet I could hardly focus on the mundane task before me. My thoughts drifted back to the previous night and the tension that hung thick in the air between my husband and me. "Are you okay?" My husband's voice broke through my reverie as he leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. His concern felt genuine, but I couldn't shake off the guilt gnawing at me. "You seem distracted." "I'm fine," I replied too quickly, turning to face him with a forced smile. The truth was far more complicated than that. Just days ago, I had shared stolen moments with my stepson that haunted me now like shadows in a dimly lit room. Later that evening, my husband surprised me with plans for a date night. "I thought we could go to that new Italian place downtown," he suggested while scrolling through his phone for reservations. It was an attempt to rekindle something we had lost along the way, romance buried beneath years of routine and familiarity. "Sounds nice," I managed to say, though inside I felt a rising tide of anxiety. How could I enjoy an evening out when thoughts of my stepson lingered just beneath the surface? As we arrived at the restaurant, dim lights flickered overhead, creating an intimate atmosphere that should have been perfect for reconnecting. Yet as we sat across from each other at a small table, my mind wandered back to our last family dinner when everything had shifted between us. "You've been quiet tonight," he remarked after we ordered. "Is something bothering you?" I hesitated before answering, searching for words that wouldn't betray my inner turmoil. "Just thinking about work," I lied smoothly. He nodded but didn't seem convinced. The conversation drifted into familiar territory, discussing our jobs and mundane daily life, but all I could think about was how different it felt compared to those fleeting moments with him. When dessert arrived, a rich tiramisu, I forced myself to engage with my husband's efforts to make this evening special. Yet every time he reached across the table or laughed at one of my jokes, I felt an electric pulse of memory surge through me, memories of hands brushing against each other and lingering gazes filled with unspoken words. After dinner, as we walked back to our car under the soft glow of streetlights, an uncomfortable silence enveloped us again. My heart raced as I replayed moments from those secret encounters in my mind, each one more intoxicating than the last. "Do you think we'll ever get back what we had?" he asked suddenly, as if reading my thoughts. I paused, feeling trapped between two worlds, the life I had built and this newfound desire that threatened everything around me. "I hope so," was all I could muster without revealing too much. Once home, I moved through our cluttered living room like a ghost in my own life. Memories surrounded me, framed photos on shelves depicting happier times, reminders of a love once vibrant now dulled by routine and unfulfilled desires. That night, sleep eluded me as I lay awake staring at the ceiling while thoughts whirled chaotically in my mind, the stepson's laughter echoing softly like music played just for me amidst haunting questions about loyalty and love. The next morning brought no relief, instead it deepened my unease about where things were heading within our family dynamic. As I prepared breakfast alone in silence again, my husband already gone for work, I found myself reaching for my phone instinctively. A message from him appeared. "Can we talk later?" My heart raced at his words, anticipation mixed with dread coursed through me like electricity. When evening fell again and he arrived home from work, there was an intensity in his gaze that made it impossible to ignore what lay ahead, a conversation long overdue yet fraught with uncertainty about how it would change everything between us. "I need you to be honest with me," he said after dinner while sitting on the couch beside me. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, they echoed what had been brewing beneath our surface for so long now. "About what?" My voice trembled slightly despite trying to maintain composure. "About us." His eyes searched mine earnestly as if seeking answers only honesty could provide, but all I could think about were those moments spent together under mountains far away where secrets thrived freely without judgment or consequence looming overhead. And then came another message from him, the stepson. "What if we took a weekend trip together? Just us?" The invitation sent shivers down my spine. It ignited something deep within me that yearned for exploration beyond boundaries set by society and expectations alike. I glanced over at my husband sitting next to me, his expression still earnest but fading slowly into uncertainty, and realized then how precarious this moment truly was. I felt my heart race at the thought of his proposal. A weekend trip, just the two of us. The very idea was intoxicating, yet terrifying. I wanted to say yes, to break free from the suffocating routine that had become my life. But guilt clawed at me, reminding me of the promises I'd made to my husband. "Are you okay?" My husband's voice broke through my thoughts. He was watching me closely, a hint of concern in his eyes. "You've been distant lately." "I'm fine," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than genuine emotion. "Just tired, I guess." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. I couldn't shake the image of my stepson's face when he suggested the getaway. The way his eyes sparkled with excitement stirred something deep within me, a longing for connection that I hadn't felt in years. But what would it mean for us? For my marriage? Later that evening, as I washed the dishes in our cluttered kitchen, I replayed every moment from his visit in my mind, the stolen glances, the accidental brushes of our hands. Each memory felt like a thread pulling me closer to him, unraveling the fabric of my mundane existence. "Do you think we should go?" I asked my husband as we sat down for dinner. His fork paused mid-air as he considered my question. "Go where?" he replied, looking genuinely puzzled. "To visit your son," I said quickly, trying to redirect the conversation before it spiraled into uncomfortable territory. "Sure," he said with a shrug, returning to his meal without further inquiry. It struck me then how little we truly communicated anymore. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, sleep eluded me. My mind raced with thoughts of what could happen if I accepted his offer. Would it be an escape or a mistake? The weight of these questions pressed heavily on my chest. The next day brought an unexpected turn when I received another message from him. "I've been thinking about our conversation. What if we just went? No one has to know." My breath caught in my throat at his words. They were both thrilling and dangerous. I hesitated before replying, knowing that any decision could change everything between us forever. Instead of answering right away, I decided to meet him at our favorite diner later that week, a place filled with memories and laughter from years past. As we sat across from each other at the booth, the familiar smell of coffee enveloped us like a comforting blanket. "So, about that trip," he started cautiously, looking down at his hands before meeting my gaze again. "Maybe we should talk about it," I suggested carefully, feeling every ounce of tension between us rise like steam from a hot cup. "I just feel like we have this connection," he began but faltered under the weight of unspoken emotions hanging in the air between us. Connection? My heart raced again. It was so much more than that for me, an attraction that defied logic and reason. "What if it's more than just family?" he asked quietly, vulnerability etched across his features. I felt torn between loyalty and desire as I searched for words that wouldn't betray either side of myself. "We can't ignore what this is," I finally said softly. He leaned closer across the table. Our breaths mingled and shared space filled with possibilities and uncertainty. Just then, an old friend walked into the diner, a reminder of simpler times before everything became complicated by emotions and expectations. "Isn't that Clara?" he asked, suddenly distracted by her presence. "Yes," I replied absently while watching Clara greet another patron with her infectious laughter, the kind we used to share before life became so serious and burdensome. As she approached our table with her warm smile, it jolted me back into reality. This wasn't just about us anymore, it was about everything surrounding us too. Family obligations and societal expectations looming over our heads like storm clouds ready to burst. After Clara left with promises to catch up later, silence enveloped us once more. Thick enough to slice through but fragile enough not to shatter entirely, yet still hanging heavily above our heads like an unresolved question mark dangling precariously over our future together. "I think we should go," he finally said after what felt like hours spent lost in thought. His gaze held a mixture of hope and fear, an invitation wrapped tightly around uncertainty begging for acceptance while simultaneously threatening chaos if rejected outrightly without consideration first given its due diligence beforehand. My heart raced again at his words. This was happening, something new unfolding right before me, but could it truly lead somewhere meaningful without tearing apart everything else along its path? And then came another message from him. "Let's make this weekend unforgettable." It hung there like an open door inviting exploration but also warning against stepping too far outside familiar boundaries already established long ago. In that moment, I stood at a crossroads unsure if stepping through would lead towards liberation or entrapment, yet somehow knowing deep down both paths carried their own risks worth considering regardless. But just as clarity began dawning upon me, a sudden realization struck hard. What would happen if we crossed those lines together? Would love blossom amidst chaos or simply burn everything down around us leaving nothing but ashes behind? The answer lingered tantalizingly close yet painfully out of reach as uncertainty loomed larger than ever, threatening consequences far beyond anything either one could anticipate alone.